and welcome to the latest edition of the Kellen Association's Unplugged podcast. And today I am delighted to be joined by Emma Brown, President of SEAP, the Society of European Affairs Professionals. Emma, thank you for joining us today. Tell us a bit about why you wanted to get involved in SEAP in the first place.
Thanks a lot, and thanks for having me. I mean, I've been a member of SEAP for nearly 10 years. SEAP represents individuals and has a group membership as well to represent lobbyists, essentially people working in public affairs in Brussels. The idea that I originally, when I first joined SEAP, was to build my network, get to know other people like-minded in the same on the same career path as me.
Did it work?
It definitely did. We have a membership of over 240 people of varying different stages of their career. And then since I've become involved in the board and then the vice president and now the president, I've become a lot more involved in the transparency, understanding the way lobbying works and how we can maintain the integrity of the career that I've chosen.
Of all professions, why is it, do you think, that lobbyists need representation?
I mean, there's a lot of myths about what lobbying is and how it's done. I think the main one is that it's done through backroom deals, cash for favors and things like that. And actually lobbying, when it's done properly, ethically and transparently, it's part of the democratic process. It brings expertise, technical or regulatory experience from real world or on the ground, especially when we're in Brussels, where we're a little bit further away from the national situations. And it brings that to the fore to policymakers and lawmakers that may not have a specific expertise in that, but have the overarching picture and the objective that they want to accomplish.
Within the association, are you comfortable with using the term lobbying? Are you kind of proud to describe that as your activity? And if that's not the case, why would you not be the Society of European Lobbyists?
We are proud. I mean, especially the people that I speak to regularly at our events, we're very proud to be lobbyists. We may not always use the term lobbyists, but I think everybody who works in the field in Brussels in many different ways describes lobbying on a daily basis and is proud of it.
Very good. So I guess a part of what you're doing is capturing what lobbying really means. But on the other hand, do you need to do something to help people distinguish between ethical and unethical lobbyists? And if so, how do you do that?
So to be a member of SEAP, we have a code of conduct, and you have to undergo a training of that code of conduct. And that sets out very clearly what we believe ethical lobbying is, transparency to uphold the highest standards and to essentially, when representing, if you're in a consultancy, when representing a client, that you are very transparent to what that client is. Or if you're like my day job, representing a trade association, that you're very clear what your trade association interests are. For us, we provide our members and we make sure that they do that training of the code of conduct. We remind them of that code of conduct on a regular basis. But we have also put in a check basically into our statutes, which requires, it allows a member to lodge a complaint confidentially with the organisation, and that we have set up a disciplinary committee which has 2 members of SEAP as well as 2 external members of the Brussels bubble, if you will, to investigate that complaint and then provide a report to the board.
How often does this happen?
So actually the disciplinary committee is brand new. Okay. And we haven't had a complaint yet. It has been enforced since September of last year.
I mean, I've been involved in these sort of mechanisms at associations. It can be quite sensitive because essentially you really have to back up the complaint and be able to prove that the person that you want to remove from the association has in fact violated the terms of membership. I like the fact that you have members and non-members on the committee. So I guess this has been thought through quite carefully.
Yes. And actually, when we launched it, we invited the now former EU Ombudsman to our General Assembly, and she was actually particularly pleased with the fact that we have 2 outsiders outside of our membership to also be involved in that investigation, because I do think that independence is needed.
Yeah. This situation where it's not clear who a lobbyist is representing, or a lobbyist is not being transparent about who he or she is representing, how common do you think this is?
Unfortunately, if you believe the most recent allegations and scandals that have been in the press in Brussels, it is quite common that there is a misuse of the term lobbying or the act of lobbying, that cash for favours have been used and everything. And that's very unfortunate, because I think it tarnishes the good work of everybody else.
Can you go further with this to start to look at the profession of a lobbyist as a profession in the sense that a lawyer is a profession, that it would require not just membership of a professional body, but also a certain amount of education, accreditation requirements?
I think it would be exceptionally hard. I mean, we all go through training of some sort. We're all trained in the policy making, the theory of policy making, understanding the ins and outs of the Brussels mechanism and the legislative process. I'm not sure how you would quantify that or certify that in a way. We have thought about it in SEAP in terms of trying to develop some form of certification that you go through a series of trainings. But I think the problem with that would also be possibly the problem that we're also seeing in Brussels as a whole, is the enforcement and the accountability to carry that out.
It would mean a lot more administration for your association, but it could do something quite dramatic for the lobbying profession.
Yes, absolutely. And we work very closely with other organisations that represent lobbying as a profession, like IPACA as well, to make sure that we're obviously aligned on some of those kind of compliance and due diligence issues.
But it's not clear that this is the vision, that we're going towards an accredited profession.
No, but perhaps if you kind of look at it from the other way around, what the institutions are moving towards in terms of increased transparency of meetings, putting more onus on the transparency register and the data that you need to add to that. The fact that you now need to list the purpose when swiping your badge to go into the European Parliament. There is more and more requirements to be transparent. I think that may then mean that we would move into an area that SEAP is very supportive of, which is a mandatory transparency register. So making sure that everybody who is a lobbyist or is trying to influence the EU process in a way is listed on the transparency register. Transparency is a two-way street. So I can register on the transparency register, but I need to also make sure that the institutions only meet registered lobbyists.
Talking about transparency, there's the kind of the transparency on the other side as well when it comes to the institutions themselves. Do you think, for instance, the Commission, to take an example, is becoming less accessible to people who want to shape policy?
I think overall, transparency has made huge progress over the past decade. However, I think we took a step back, if you look specifically at the Commission, when we lost access to the Commission officials on EU Who's Who. Mm-hmm. Previously, they were the institution that was the most transparent, providing all the desk officers and technical officers that were working in each DG. Unfortunately, those disappeared seemingly overnight with no communication. I think it was a huge step back in terms of transparency, but also we were very disappointed that there was no form of communication or understanding to the reasoning and the objective to these moves.
I saw the case with the Ombudsman about that, and so it was clearly a decision that was taken very quickly.
Yes, and I completely understand the reasoning from the Commission. You obviously need to maintain the safety of your staff. However, we were very disappointed that there are ways, and we've thought of several, that could have been used to maintain the access, but to provide checks and balances along the way. And that's where we could use the advent of digital tools to support that.
Do you think that there is the chance that this information would become accessible again?
Unfortunately, I don't think that's a chance.
Okay.
We will continue at SEAP to lobby specifically for that. But unfortunately, at least the indications we've received is that it may be gone forever.
Okay, fine. What are some of the other, let's say, trends in Brussels lobbying that are discussed among your members?
So recently we've been looking at the increased transparency of meeting minutes. So the Commission has now indicated that anyone down to head of unit level should be reporting and publishing meetings of the minutes that they have with interested stakeholders or interest groups. For us, it is a huge step forward to have that in place. However, we would have a preference to have those minutes validated by the other members of the meeting. So our understanding is that the Commission publishes very top level minutes, but at the same time, you would expect at least a 24-hour notice that these minutes are going online. And if there was anything sensitive in a corporate for a corporate or commercial interest, that you would have at least a couple of hours to change that.
What advice would you give to somebody who's starting their career as a lobbyist working for an association?
Join things like SEAP. Come and join our association. Get involved in different events. Understand what the different facets of lobbying are. Everybody associates lobbying very much as influencing the ordinary legislative procedure, but there's a lot that comes before that in terms of the preparation of the legislation that then is discussed by the member states and the parliament. And those parts are arguably some of the most interesting parts, where you're looking at impact assessments, you're trying to understand the real world impact of different policy scenarios. So you get a real taste of EU legislation, I think, if you follow a file from start to finish. And then I think in terms of being part of a trade association is understand where the decisions are made. So we're very lucky or fortunate in Brussels that the majority of the trade associations are ASBLs, which means that they are registered on the registry in Belgium. And it means that their statutes are also public. And that means their decision-making process is also public. And that's something that isn't across the board, especially at national level. It's something that the OECD has put into their most recent guidance on responsible lobbying. But Belgium is already ahead of the game on that. But it allows you to understand where those crucial decisions will be made and who's accountable in the organization that you're working for.
As a young lobbyist, what sort of skills do you think you need to develop?
I mean, networking is crucial, being able to understand where the influence and the decisions are being made internally and also externally. It's not necessarily always the votes that you see, the public votes that you see that is where the decision is made. Often groups of MEPs have already gotten together in advance and they have made that decision. So it's understanding the dynamics and what makes Brussels, the cogs in Brussels, turn.
What are the next steps for SEAP?
I have just become president last September. So in this mandate, myself and the rest of the board will be looking at running members-only events, specifically looking at trying to support the members of our organization in their day-to-day. So running trainings on AI, the value of AI in public affairs, the value of AI in communications. Can AI actually help us all on our day-to-day? But also looking at antitrust, understanding why, if you're in a trade association, you have specific antitrust rules and what you need to make sure you avoid to maintain the competition rules. We plan this year to run members-only events, very much focused on trainings that will help our members in their day-to-day. Looking at the value of AI, the role that AI can have in public affairs and communications, especially in the Brussels bubble. We're looking at competition rules and ensuring that our members that are part of trade associations are comfortable with the antitrust rules, and also understanding the revolving door, which is something that's, I think, a turn of phrase that everybody understands, but the rules behind it and what it actually means, depending on the level that you previously had in an institution, is very important, especially if you're involved in recruitment. And I think the other priority for us is that we're in the year that we should be reviewing the interinstitutional agreement. So That involves obviously the transparency register, and that's a huge priority for us because we believe that whilst it's an indispensable tool, there are still gaps that need to be closed.
Do you think that the rules on the revolving door are strict enough, or is it a case of lack of enforcement?
I think it's a case of lack of enforcement, to be honest. And I think the Commission has a case-by-case basis going at the moment, which can often be quite confusing for people, especially when recruiting. I understand that the rules have become more stringent, for instance, for parliamentary assistants, but then we have also seen that former commissioners and commission officials have been able to take roles that I was surprised that they were able to take at this time. Now, they always have restrictions, but how that is enforced, I'm not entirely sure.
Okay, so, I mean, it's clear that there's lots of work for SEAP still left to do. So thanks for joining us today and keep up the good work.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. And now we are here for the second part of this episode where we're talking about transparency in lobbying and also lobbying in general at associations. And I am delighted to be joined by Marco Baldoli, who is Associate Director at Kellen, focusing on a number of different areas, a number of different subject matter topics. What I'm interested in, Marco, is let's say we take a company. Why would it make more sense for them to try and get their voice heard through an association as opposed to going it alone and doing their own lobbying?
First of all, thanks for having me. To answer your question, which is a very interesting one and fundamental one, I would say that first things first, representation. When we talk about representation of interests before the institutions, is key to have them framed into a sector. When companies go and represent their position in a trade association, first of all, their voice is potentially stronger, and there is a lot of chances that they're going to be heard better. First of all, for the dynamics of the Brussels game. Of course, institutions prefer to have large representations, entities voicing their concerns rather than a single entity. And that's the case of a company. Of course, we know that public affairs also is a game that is played by different actors. But working for trade association for such a long time, I must say that when the sector, and therefore a company in the sector, manages to bring their position within a trade association, well, that's definitely one of the key aspects that might lead to a successful result.
Okay, but isn't it the case that because, let's say, the secretariat at an association will have to spend a lot of time trying to get consensus on particular topics, that often this leads to watered down positions, and as a result, some kind of communication difficulty with respect to trying to make those positions seem relevant?
Well, I think that the secretariat is playing a key role in actually amplifying the voice of all actors in a trade association rather than watering down their position.
So you don't agree with that?
I would not agree that the secretariat or in a trade association, of course, depends on the trade association. There are trade associations that are so big that might be one of the risks, and sometimes that happens. Yep. But I'm not saying that in general that's expected result. I would say that a Secretary General, but the Secretariat in general, should try to actually have consensus as a strength. In a way, you can build consensus and therefore momentum for a certain position. In certain cases, that can be perceived as watering down a certain position, but actually could be also built in a different way and can bring more strength to your position in a trade association. To give you a concrete example, otherwise we're talking a little bit about general issues. I would say that when we have a business case or a case scenario where different companies are trying to bring their position to the table, or national associations, depending on the trade association, to reach consensus is also trying to make sure that we we can sort of put together different angles. Those different angles, depending on the specific case, might lead to a stronger position. It's not necessarily, a matter of compromise. It's a matter of collaboration. It's not a matter of competition. It's a matter of collaboration. If we manage to put that in a, let's say, align the planets in that way, maybe we have the opposite result than watering down.
Sure. So, in fact, with different voices within an association, you can make the position stronger.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Tell me then about your approach to lobbying in Brussels.
Well, I think that when I started, I had something completely different in mind. Of course, I came to Brussels and I was expecting, I don't know, something you see in movies. Most likely, suits and basically meetings,
nice
a high level.
Yeah.
Yeah. But actually, it's a game that you play. It's a long shot. I don't know how to say that. I think that one of the key elements is to be credible. So to build your reputation as a trustworthy source, to make sure that you're reliable for the institutions, and therefore it's something that you do day after day. Rome was not built in a day, as they say. So I think that's a long game you're playing here in Brussels in terms of lobbying approach.
Yeah, and that's it. And so, I mean, patience is absolutely crucial. But I guess also managing the expectations of your association members too, to make them aware that short-term wins are often not part of the story.
Absolutely.
Is that true?
Yeah, I think so. Of course, it really depends on the case. There are sometimes there is pressure because that's what we experience with a little bit the policy making. Sometimes there is urgency, and that's something that we cannot just deny. But I would say that indeed managing expectations also is very important. Communication goes both ways. We just do not communicate with institutions. We have a responsibility towards our members. Some say that we're just middlemen. Actually, we are doing something very important in translating key messages in a way that institutions can receive the message of the civil society and vice versa.
But if kind of these short-term wins are so short in supply, how do you convince your members that you're actually doing anything? I mean, how do you show them that there's a return for their investment from the membership fee, for instance?
That's a wonderful question. That's how to measure lobby. It's absolutely something that puzzles me as well, because, of course, for some cases, for instance, you can have a return of investment, especially when you have, let's say, business cases or you're lobbying for a specific policy where you, for instance, have its fiscal policy. And then you know that a certain result will lead to a certain objective, might be to the advantage of certain trade associations or some members. On the other hand, there are sometimes that it's a complex system. So you cannot really measure exactly the level of your contribution, but it's an obligation of means, meaning that if we can prove that we acted at our best and we use all the means and we implemented a certain strategy to our best and to the best of our possibilities, then in that case, it's already a first metrics we can use to prove that we are doing our job right.
I think that's the best way to look at it. It's about doing the best that we can possibly do and then building up the trust with the members to show them that we really have done this, and making people aware as well that you're not going to win on every single file.
Correct. I 100% agree.
Marco, it's been great speaking with you today.
Likewise.
Thank you.
Thank you.